Hello there, welcome back to our Orlando time-lapse series. Today we continue where we left off and start with layouting the railroad station itself. I have to say that the tunnel that we met in the last episode, I very much like how it turned out, and also I really liked that it worked first try basically. I was a little bit afraid about it actually because I didn't know if I'm able to do it a second time, after all this time. In the last months, I of course continued with Space Mountain and Big Thunder Mountain and polishing them up. That gave me of course a decent base to get started back into building. And in retrospect, this helped me tremendously because without that I wouldn't have made such much progress over the last few days. I mean, at the time where I'm recording right now, basically the railroad station is almost done. So I'm 50 hours in at this point, and it really worked out great, I think. But I don't want to spoil it now, and you will see the progress in the next episodes. And I think it tells a much better story than to suddenly see it on the thumbnail or something like that. So it's a completely different approach how this time-lapse series will go. I mean, in the Anaheim series, you probably saw the teaser and also the release video, and at this point already you pretty much saw everything, not in detail, but in a general overview. And then you of course know how this area will look later on, and then you can see over time how all the small bits from the time-lapse fit into that big picture. And here the workflow is basically inversed. So we first see the time-lapse and then we see the result later on. But of course, the bigger the park gets, this will fade into each other. And I mean, I have to provide a thumbnail. So there's always the idea here to show basically what's been built in the episode itself. And I think it's quite good also over the whole period to see in the playlist and constant, you see basically how the park grows constantly. And this brings me also to the next topic I want to talk about. It was inspired by one comment someone made in the last episode. And just a quick reminder, if you also have a question about this project and want it to be answered basically here in the episode, just wrote in the comment a little note that you are okay with that I show your comment as a screenshot in the recording itself. But again, just a little hint, because otherwise I will reply to your comment in writing. But let's come back to the comment. So the LDM web wrote, I'm curious if you already thought of how you are going to balance your time and efforts between the Anaheim project and this one. And I think it's a very good question, and I will happily answer to it. And for that, let's go back maybe 3 or 4 months. The end of July, I released this teaser video, the first video on this channel basically. On that time, I made a decision to come back with this project, And even before that, I thought about ways maybe how you can present it. And as I said in the introduction video, most of the footage was gone. I couldn't recover that because my PC at that time was just not good enough to record it in a proper fashion like we do it now. That was of course a huge problem. And it just feels so dumb. And it just also sounds so stupid to explain somebody, okay, I invested so many hours into that, and but I'm dumb, I did not record it because my PC wasn't good enough, or because I didn't bother at the time. And luckily, from my past Twitch streams, which I streamed this whole project basically on Twitch, and generally when you stream something, Twitch will make an automatic recording of that that's saved up to 30 days, I believe. And only because of that, we have footage, I mean, Twitch saved it here. I downloaded some episodes, but not all of them. And I mean, I can remember the download experience of them was not great because you had to download over 20 gigabyte at once and the speed was so off. But again, this is absolutely no excuse. I just feel so dumb about this whole thing. But I feel it's worth to mention that because it's the backstory of what later would become the Timelapse series. And let's get finally back to the question, okay? So when I think about it, I always think about it about this perspective. Where can I be most efficient in what I'm doing? So if I'm building in the prequel or in the sequel, or if I'm recording something or I do something for the channel. So all of those things I try to maximize my efficiency in what I'm doing. And if I do, of course, everything at once, I mean, we would made something, of course, but I think we can maximize that, you know. And that's what I feel about also with this release. And I mean, there's this whole hype about this game. And I believe that also most people right now are much more excited about the new game because, I mean, they want to try it out, they want to learn from it, and also from other people that show them what can be built in this game, just also to get some inspiration going. And I think it's currently, in the current time, I think it's much more, there's much more value in that when we stick with the Orlando park right now. And at least until we made the railroad station. I mean, it will take a couple of episodes, I'm sure. And then maybe even the central hub and the surrounding buildings, I would think. And from there on, I might consider jumping back into Planet Coaster 1. But I would focus mostly on the rides to get those POVs out. I feel that I could maximize the efficiency here if we stick to the Timelapse series and Planet Coaster 2. And while that's running, I work on those rides and those POVs. I think it just makes sense there because then you have the new game with the new building mechanics, and I have also fun while building and try something new. And on the other side, we have, of course, those rides, and I think that's what you didn't see before, and that's, I think, has priority then. But it has also to do with a certain mood, or I talked also about in previous episodes about this kind of flow state, you know, where you just can't stop yourself from building or what you are doing. And I think in those moments, it's always the best just to keep on going. Then you perform the best in your best way, to your best of your ability. And especially on Space Mountain, I felt that a lot. I mean, it was a pain to get there. On many parts, not fun to do it. But when you see this final thing standing there and everything works out in the end, it's just magical, you know. But I don't want to get too melodramatic here. I just feel that's the right way to continue now, to build our railroad station and to keep this flow going. Maybe it's not even a dedicated decision I make. It's basically when you keep on going, suddenly things start on happening in the park by itself, you know. Certain areas become finished, certain new things start, and it's a natural progression, you know. And then oftentimes those solutions, how to continue, how to balance this time management between the two parks becomes almost, you know, this organic thing. But yeah, we will see how it turns out over the next couple of days and weeks. And I adjust accordingly if something's not working right. But currently it works out great. And I can't wait to show you the railroad station. So let me start to comment what you see now on the screen. And it's basically this pre-planning stage where you basically lay out the ground floor of the building. And this stage is of course very important, especially on buildings like this, where basically the entire rest of the park is relying on. I mean, when we would work on Frontierland or another area in the park, those inaccuracies are not that consequently, you know, when maybe Big Thunder Mountain is not exactly 1 meter to the right or left, doesn't matter that much. But if this station is off by 1 or 2 meters, then everything will have inaccuracies because they are depending on it to be in the exact location where it should be. And that's why I use so many rulers there, to pinpoint that location of that railroad station, where it should be later on. And where everything else in the park is relying on, you know. And as I'm building on it right now, I'm constantly thinking about how to make this station work, or because I had this principle in the prequel that for every ride I do, I also do the interior. And I mean, you can guess it already. We do the interior of the railroad station, of course. And this makes the whole process a little bit more complicated. Because if we would only do the exterior of the railroad station, like I did in the prequel, then I would have only to use wall pieces, build the exterior walls, and I'm good to go. I can just build everything around it. But now I have to also plan that interior space within. For that I need very, let's say, compact pieces. And especially the wall pieces makes it kind of hard here, because most of them are bound to a certain grid. And this grid is mostly in 2 meters to 4 meter sections. And so for that use case, we have those new wall set pieces I already talked about. And those are so golden for that job, because I can exactly divide them into the exact distances I need later for this build. And I can even rotate them and use the short side on them. And this is basically the trick here. And the benefit by that method is that those wall pieces, they not only serve the purpose as an exterior wall, they also serve as a purpose as an interior wall. So later when we do the interior, we already have those walls that will guide us, and they translate the outer contours of the building into the inside. And also you see those cornerstones again from the resort pieces. Those pieces are actually quite important because they later define this proportion of the building. You can see on the blueprint of this railroad station that those stones are always there, and they work almost like a decorative ruler within that. And so they are pretty useful in that. And it makes the whole thing a little bit easier then to make the right proportions later on for the building. So here I'm working on those wooden profiles for the later gateways or doors or windows that are basically on the, since we are working on the back side of the building right now, there are 4 doors, and on the far right and on the far left you have 2 windows. In the middle one you have another window that's a little bit more extravagant, and you have basically the same system also on the front side. But on the front side you have actually 7 doors there. So all of those could be opened there, and people could basically exit or enter the railroad from there. And here I'm working on those doors. In real life they are those swing doors, you know, like in a saloon. And as I'm seeing this, I think a great idea that I would like to try out. And it was this question, should I open this door or should I leave it closed? So maybe we could use this in-game piston, this rotational piston, and we could actually animate that this door could be opened. And I mean, we could try to implement that. Maybe it doesn't make much sense since somebody would open it, not that the door itself opens by itself. But I think I could try that out. And the question was here also, because there are no class sheets or class elements in the game now, that I could use in between of those profiles, like I did in the prequel. In the prequel we had that. It's another thing which isn't in the game right now, but we know that with the new free update they announced, which should release in December, have said they add class pieces then. At the time I was building, I did not know that, but I already thought at some point they will implement that. And the idea was just here to leave it empty until it's in the game. Another thing that is very important for me is to keep everything as tidy and as well structured as I can, so that everything is not a mess. Since in Anaheim I did not really care about that, since I was mostly interested in getting things done. But here it makes much sense to start with that at the very beginning and just keep everything well structured and organized. And this will 100% boost our efficiency in the later run. So here where you see I placed down those round lamps, I'm actually a bit disappointed that they are attached to this pole that I can't remove. So I have to hide that in the wall. And you know, when I did this, I was remembered to Planet Coaster 1, where I tried to do exactly that. And in Planet Coaster 1 there was even a more fitting piece for that. I just find it, there's so much potential when you would add something like art pieces that function like a light, so that you could make pretty much everything out of that. And you wouldn't have to rely on those very themed in-game lights that I barely use properly. So right now I make my own custom fence, because I was scrolling through the menus and I wanted to have a decent fence there, because you have this very iconic theming on it. And you also see that I made a little prototype in the back where I just use like those poles that I could scale down pretty much, but that was too little detail for me. And eventually I found out that there are pieces in the game in the support structure menu, I think. On those pieces you can actually scale them down even to 10%. And this is obviously completely nuts then. And those pieces are actually metal. And I mean, it's perfect for this job. And I mean, look at it. It looks just gorgeous, because it's a real fence. It's made out of individual little metal items. Eventually I wanted also to have those little metal rings on it, but then I thought maybe it's too crazy and I didn't found a fitting element for it. So I just copied this fence then around. And at this point the piece count gets really high, because I made this fence what you basically call modular, and one piece of that is about, I think, 100 pieces. So if you have like 5 meters, you have already 500 pieces there. So maybe it's a bit crazy, but again, this area is super important, so it's justifiable. So the last few minutes of this video I wanted to talk a little bit about this recent free update they announced. And I was so happy to see that they reacted very quickly to that, because I mean, there were so many creators, including me, making videos about it, that it's really great to have this very rapid response from them. And maybe if it's a bit damage control, I think it's the right decision, because what's the alternative here? There is pretty much no alternative here than to make such a honest statement. And they included so many fixes and features that they will add in December, but also in the future, that I have no doubt anymore that this game will be in maybe 1 or 2 months. It will be a great experience to play. I don't want to say anything more because I think I said most of those things in the last episode, but yeah, looking forward to it. This will conclude today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, subscribe, like or comment, join our Discord server, watch my videos about Anaheim or Orlando, and thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.